Hey, welcome to another episode of the Chiefs Outsiders podcast. Kansas City's coming off a big win against a division rival, which makes it a lot of fun to talk about, and even more fun to talk about that there were so many key plays and turning points that could have made the difference, and one very glaring play that did define the game. So, you want to start giving us some thoughts on the biggest play of the game?
So the Jalen Watson pick six ultimately wound up winning the game for the Chiefs. This is just an unbelievable play by a seventh round rookie who did not expect to be in this kind of moment. And, you see Gerald Everett tapping his helmet, trying to get out of the game, and they're going tempo, and, he's gassed too. He's exhausted, and he just jumps it and makes the play and ultimately won the game.
So, there are a few different things that make that play so interesting. Quite a few, actually. So, number one is I didn't know the story that he was a fast food employee not that long ago.
hmm
And, you love those stories for a person, so that's a great story for him. But then the relevant part of this is Justin Reid talking post game about the difference in the game. And I'm going to paraphrase this pretty strongly, but is that Andy Reid runs such a hard training camp that the San Diego Chargers got tired and the Chiefs didn't.
And you hear the players talk about that all throughout camp, not just during the season, that this is truly is preparing them for the season when they do these long drive scenarios or fourth down scenarios where they're running 16 plays in a row and it's got to get off the field or got to get a touchdown, whatever it is. And that's exactly the kind of situation that it was.
And you see this trend now to not play anyone in preseason, to give a lot of guys time off in camp. And the Chiefs ran a really hard camp. They always run a hard camp, and it's a really young team. And I think that they're also maybe a little smarter than the Chargers about rotating those players out. At some point, when you've got a guy asking to be off the field and they're like, no, we're not taking you out of the game, that's a questionable call to me.
Mhm.
And then the second thing, you got one of your players that's basically saying, guys, I got nothing on this.
He just caught two consecutive passes for 37 total yards.
And they're in a hurry up. Like, you think you need to target that guy right
Right.
now?
And that's where the discourse I feel like goes, especially when you're so much of the national coverage of this game. You're comparing these quarterbacks and Mahomes didn't play well and he had to drop picks and all this, whatever. But Justin Herbert made that decision first and goal. Guy just asked out of the game and he's throwing him the ball in that situation and it wound up costing them big time.
And then the other part of that specific play is Willie Gay blew it up.
hmm
And there's one angle that just clearly shows he was in the perfect spot. He made Herbert drop his arm. And now Herbert's throwing to a guy that he can't see.
hmm
And that's not a lucky play. Like there's all these turning points in a game, and at a critical moment, Kansas City made the play and San Diego didn't. So that was a key moment, but that wasn't the only deciding moment in the game. Really, the biggest thing for me, because all the individual plays are going to vary from week to week, but what I was interested in is I felt like Staley was so hyper aggressive, and that's been talked about a lot, that his aggression and going for every fourth down cost them a lot. I felt like both teams were very conservative this week.
I was at the game and I almost couldn't stand how conservative the Chiefs offense was, especially in that first half. They started the game going really heavy personnel offensively, and it's always a thing on Thursday night football, especially early in the year, that you've kind of got to cut some stuff back. You don't have time to do a full install, and all of that plays into it. But yeah, the Chargers had several. I mean, they attempted four fourth downs in the game, but they had several fourth and twos, fourth and one, fourth and threes that they punted the ball on.
So the first one that comes to my mind is we have a 3rd and 2 across midfield on the first drive, and they run a play that didn't look like it had any chance to work, trying to get McCole around the outside to the short side of the field. I mean, that play
And
lost yards.
where that play broke down was you have Travis Kelce trying to set the edge offensively against Joey Bosa.
Yeah, and Kelsey's a Hall of Famer, like all time tight end, and but he's not blocking Bosa. It's
He
just
can't.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
Bosa's as good as anybody, and he's not giving that edge up that easy. So if we hadn't lost yardage there, I mean, I wonder what we would have done in that scenario. My biggest thing, I understand it's smart. There's the right decision, and there's the analytics, and then there's just emotionally, I hate nothing worse than punting from around the 40, 45 yard line, something like that, because you're at least 50% chance that you're going to kick it into the end zone and you're going to gain 20 yards of field position, and you're sacrificing a scoring opportunity.
Exactly.
And that, in that case, it was a touchback, but even if we downed them at the 10 or the 15,
how much are you really gaining?
They did lose yardage on that one, so I wouldn't hold that one against them. But then the Chargers follow that up by, on their field goal drive, they have a 3rd and 10 plus in scoring position, and they throw a little screen pass that never had any chance of getting the first down. That play, I mean, everyone has seen that play pick up the first down, but generally it's like a give up play. Like,
yeah,
they're out here to beat the big brother, and they're going to run that on 3rd and 10 in scoring position. And then on the next possession, we did the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. We all remember the Pat Mahomes first year. How many 3rd and 18s did he pick up by scrambling around and then gunning it?
In that first 2 years, really, that was the whole thing with Mahomes. It was like every 3rd and 15 plus, he just gets it every single time.
So now we're trailing in a game to our little brother, and we have a 3rd and 10 or so.
3rd and 15.
And we just dump the ball off and sacrifice the punt. So I'm not even necessarily saying that these are terrible plays, but they're not aggressive plays. Then we had 4th and inches. That was that was on our side. We had a 4th and inches, maybe the 30, 35 yard line, something like that. But it's inches. For me, I'm going there. And that's a Brandon Staley kind of decision, but
I kind of get that. I definitely do. I'm sure in the moment I wanted them to go there. But especially retrospectively looking back at this game and seeing what a moment this was, I think especially at the end of the year, we'll look back at this defensive performance and what a building block this was in the year of you saw Andy trust those guys a lot in this game. Like I said, several 4th and shorts that we punted on.
I wish I knew the conversion percentage on a quarterback sneak when you only need inches. Just off the top of my head, it's like 95 for inches, not 4th and 1. If it's that close, I'm going quarterback sneak there.
But the Chiefs don't do that.
No, they like the Blake Bell quarterback sneak or the Kelce quarterback sneak, but you got to have something in there. And I don't like running that, even handing it to Burton, who's like $1 million for $1 million on converting those.
Yeah.
I don't like 4th and inches is the same as 4th and 1 if you go backward before you go forward.
Yeah.
Because then it's 50% chance that we win the line of scrimmage.
Right.
I only like that as a sneak, and we don't sneak Pat because of the one play.
Right.
So that's just another example of a conservative play. From memory, I think they also had another 4th and 1, 4th and 2 that they punted on, and then we had a 4th and 1.
4th and goal from the 1.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a play. You're down 3, and they've been outplaying you, and you kick the tying field goal.
And believe me, I was all about, it's like, you got to go for that. You got Pat Mahomes, and that's what Pat was saying. He was in Andy's ear on the sideline, but I really loved, I don't know if you saw it, Andy's post game when they asked him about that. His literal reaction was, he was like, well, I just thought, tie it up, new game. And I really loved that.
And so all of this is not to criticize because, like I said earlier, maybe it's the right play, and there is no right play because you'll never know both outcomes. But we did have the AFC Championship game where we went for a goal line play like that, and if we'd kicked a field goal, we might have won that game.
Right.
So it's just the main takeaway here is neither team was aggressive, and I think Staley's a better coach if he is more managed with his risk taking.
And then here's another thing when you talk about the coaching disparity from this game. Not that I think Brandon Staley cost them this game, particularly with his decision making, but when you look at Andy Reid, who's coached almost 500 games in the NFL as a head coach, that's not even counting assistant coach experience. What you're looking at is a really high level ability to feel out how a game is playing and knowing when you have to be more aggressive offensively versus leaning on your defense.
Yeah, and we've all nitpicked some clock management or some decision making things in this kind of category, but the big picture is you're talking about one of the 5 most successful coaches in NFL history by any measure. And it's lazy to just say total career wins is at the top because that can be accomplished by a mediocre coach who stays in the league forever.
Right.
But man, there are so many dominant stats for Andy Reid as a coach. I mean,
Hmm.
I watch all these shows the next day and I keep hearing that the Chiefs got lucky. And you could make a case for a few plays, and I'm going to make a case for a few plays where the Chargers got lucky. But outside of that, at some point, when you've got a coach who has been dominant for 10 plus years twice,
Hmm.
how much at some point you're making your own luck. When you've been with a franchise for 10 years and had a winning record every year, 6 straight division titles, taken 2 different teams to 4 consecutive conference championships. Like, I'm not ever calling an Andy Reid coach team lucky because that's when preparation meets opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's again everybody, every former player, every guy who's ever coached under him. Andy's the preparation is the biggest thing.
And here's the next big talking point that annoyed me, that Mahomes threw 3 picks that were taken back by penalty. There was one interception where they got lucky because I don't think it was really a hold, defensive holding.
Yeah.
On and he just launched it up in the ball to where that receiver was going. But I don't think that one could have been kind of lucky. But Herbert did the same thing. I mean, he drilled Willie Gay in the chest later,
Yeah.
and the only reason Gay didn't pick it off is because
Bolton had
Bolton
already hit
almost,
the ball.
yeah, Bolton deflected it. Like he threw it right at 2 guys and got lucky.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of stuff, I felt like it evened out. The other 2 balls, from my memory, he only threw them because he already knew there was a penalty and that it was going our way.
So the first one that you were talking about, the deep ball to Marquez that they got tied up, I think that was a bad call. Like you said, honestly, there's an argument that was an offensive penalty on Marquez. Interception gets waved off. The second one was the drop that is actually the big controversy where Mahomes threw it to nobody and there was no penalty on that play, but Asante Samuel dropped the ball. I think it's pretty clear where the hand they're saying is underneath the ball. That's the hand when the ball hits the ground, where you can clearly see the ball on the ground. You see that hand move up the ball. I think that's inarguable.
Yeah, and that one was just bad on Pat.
Yeah, that's a mistake. And then the one in the red zone on the fade to Fortson, it looked like it may have been a miscommunication on the route or on the throw. That, I mean, that would have been a really impressive play, but I wouldn't have said that was a dropped interception by any means.
So, but I was thinking of a play where we had a defender jump off sides. There was an interception thrown and they were running back with it, but
Oh yeah, there was. There was the one right before the deep Justin Watson touchdown. It was on the first play of that drive. Pat threw up a little ball to McCole and there was defensive pass interference and a defensive offsides on what ended up being a tipped interception.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that Pat had a great game, actually. He did have a couple of plays he'd like to have back, but man, he made some of those vintage plays that we
Mhm.
love him for too. That nobody, not Justin Herbert or Josh Allen's as close as it gets on that first touchdown.
The first one was, I think that's only Pat. That the vision to, and again, quoting him from the post game, like they asked him, like, so is that a reaction thing or like you're just kind of doing it or are you thinking through all this? And he kind of explained it. He was like, well, I was rolling right and I was going to run and then there was a guy and then I was going to throw it and then he jumped. So I kind of pump faked and ran past him. And then he said, I was just looking to get rid of it and I saw a flash of red come across my face. So I just threw it. And he makes it sound like it's a normal, easy play. But the vision to bend and get that through two sets of arms.
And that's the improvised plays. And just like the AFC Championship game, the run against the Titans, his ability to just make something that isn't there is next level. And he made enough of those plays that he didn't have a bad game. There's just a couple balls he'd like to have back. Like I said, Herbert had a couple of balls he shouldn't have thrown too.
Mhm. And that's my biggest problem. If you want to say that Justin Herbert played a comparable game to Patrick Mahomes in this game, that's fine. Like Herbert was not bad. I don't think Mahomes was terribly bad. That neither one of them was excellent. Neither one of them took the game over, but I think they played comparable games.
And then I mentioned that might have been a bad call in our favor, but I've got a list of bad calls that went in the Chargers' favor. The very next possession, you have the call where the defender Bosa hit Pat Lowe,
Hmm.
and they said he was pulled into him, and he wasn't pulled into him. That was 15 on us, and it should have been
And
15 on them.
which
It
I
was
think it
10 on
was
us.
half the distance.
Yeah, sorry.
But the idea that Andrew Wiley, who is, you can clearly tell Joey Bosa has already won the rep. He is falling down backwards. The idea that Wiley would try and propel him into the quarterback is ridiculous.
So that was a bad call. The very next play, Chargers were offsides, just wasn't called. I rewatched it a couple times. They were offsides. Then you got the play down on the goal line where Kelce was picked up and body slammed, and not just like a one-on-one play where you gain leverage and throw someone down, but Travis is already stopped by somebody else and he just picks him up. That's flat out, that's a personal foul. That wasn't called. And then at the end on our final field goal drive, in a situation that could have mattered if they got that extra point or that the onside kick, and also we would have taken off most of the rest of the clock.
I was going to say,
There was a pass interference where Scantling was interfered with. They didn't call it. So there was not an advantage in penalties in any way for
no,
for the
I
chart
don't
for
think
the
so. I
Chiefs.
think it was a poorly officiated game on both sides.
Yeah, and every game has calls like that. Let's talk about some other guys who came up big or didn't. There's another Watson that came out of nowhere for me making a big play.
Yeah, Justin Watson on the deep double move on J.C. Jackson. It's a really impressive route, especially if you're considering that this is the fifth receiver in the Chiefs'
I
offense.
almost wonder like if Jackson is like, oh, hey, this is the backup, or didn't really put in the scouting on how
Right,
fast he was.
right, yeah,
But that's a big time play for
huge, and
a new receiver.
yeah, and that's absolutely a game-turning play. I mean, the Chiefs. There's always, whenever you have Mahomes as the quarterback, you believe that the next drive, even no matter how bad it's been, you believe the next drive they're going to go get the touchdown and tie it up or whatever it is. So you're not saying the Chiefs wouldn't have scored, but they it was hard for them all night. No matter what it was, it was nothing came easy. And to get a 41-yard touchdown like that, from like I said, your fifth receiver, it's a big moment.
Yep, and that's another case. Pat stepping forward into the throw, which he did a lot. I didn't see a lot of falling back throws.
He
A
navigated
lot
the
more tonight.
pocket really well on that particular play.
Okay, then we've got Willie Gay
Willie
and
Gay
Nick
and
Bolton
Nick Bolton once again, both having
fantastic.
strong weeks. And from the stadium, I was there. I walked out of that building thinking that Willie Gay had not played well. I thought he had missed tackles all over the place. I knew he was around the ball all game, but whenever I, leave and I see what everyone else is saying, and I see the 11 tackles, and he had the big pass deflection that should have been an interception. Willie Gay was dominant in this game.
Yeah, there's the one play that stands out where even on that play, what I was impressed with from Gay is patience and staying home and being in the right spot.
On the screen.
Yeah, the one at the end, yeah, the out on the outside, Eckler made him miss.
Hmm.
So he didn't make the tackle, but he read the play and he was in position and he made a lot of plays.
And
So I really think our two starting linebackers are playing phenomenal.
they are. And then the thing too that I feel like needs to be mentioned about Willie Gay, especially like I just said, he missed several tackles. Austin Eckler, which is what Willie Gay, I feel like his main priority on the night was being around that guy and keeping track of him. Austin Eckler is a very difficult man to tackle for anybody. So I mean, missing a few on a guy like Austin Eckler and, still making some of the biggest plays in the game.
I saw two plays stand out to me from Bolton, and both of them were tackles 1 yard from the first down. One was on like a 3rd and 1 where they were trying to stretch to the left side of the Chargers offense, and he blew through and stopped that for a loss. Another one was one of these little dump off plays, and the running back looks like he's going to pick it up, and Bolton just stands him up and throws him back. So I thought both of them had great games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about the coverage from the corners.
So Jalen Watson obviously stands out for the pick six, but I will say early he did get picked on a little bit by Mike Williams, which Mike Williams must just love playing in Arrowhead because every time he comes to town, he has a big game and he's a thorn in our side. And he did it again, had a big game, 113 yards and a touchdown. And he was just at the beginning, it was those little stick routes that they were putting right on him. And with a guy that size, there's not much any corner can do, let alone a 7th round rookie.
And like the touchdown, like that's just a guy making a great. That ball was in the only place.
I was going to say.
Because if he didn't put it out where it had to be one-handed, then it wouldn't have been caught.
Exactly.
So he wasn't in bad position on that one. I did think Fenton got burned a couple times.
Yeah.
Fenton was the one on the one where it's a PI at the 1 yard line and he caught it anyway.
Yeah.
So he held him and then he interfered with him and then he let him catch it.
Yeah. No,
So he didn't have a great night.
which again, for Rashad Fenton, who is undersized on Mike Williams, that's a tough ask for him to. But you would like to see him not commit 2 penalties and allow the catch.
He started off by getting burned, and then afterwards he's like, "Well, I'll just grab him," and he still caught it. But so that wasn't great. I don't remember seeing a lot of Thornhill, which for a safety, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I didn't see him getting burned, but he didn't make any big plays either. I do remember Justin Reid making a couple of nice plays. One was on a 3rd down, pretty critical 3rd down, and he came over and deflected a ball right before it got to the receiver.
Oh yeah, on that it was a 3rd and 2 right at midfield. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a critical play where he made a nice
And it
defensive
was
play.
perfectly timed, I might add.
So coverage, we had some issues at corner, but ultimately, here's the takeaway on the defense, because nobody's highly rating the Chiefs' defense right now, but after you had the Chargers got their opening 10 points, after that we had punt, end of half. They come out of half and get the touchdown, and then it's punt, interception, punt, and then we're up 10 with 3 minutes left and started trading time for yards, and they got the last touchdown. But they had a string of like 8 possessions with 1 drive in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't beat the defense up too bad when you have the greatest team to ever take the field, the San Diego Chargers, having 7 punts in 8 drives.
And again, a lot of people look at the Chargers being 4 for 4 on fourth down in this game, but they were 5 for 16 on third downs. And that's after only allowing 3 first downs against Arizona. So that's pretty good.
Right now, if you're talking big picture, that you would say the Chiefs' defense is ahead of schedule. And the Chiefs'
Definitely.
offense has been what it has been.
Definitely.
That it's been explosive at times, and then it's had times where it bogged down against good defenses.
I was going to say, and the Chargers are, especially with the acquisition of J.C. Jackson and a healthy Derwin James, they are built to slow down the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And Travis Kelce being your leading receiver with 51 yards, that's not how most Chiefs games end up. That's not what you expect from this offense, but managed to win the game.
Yeah. So on the defensive line, the hero for the defense was Bolton and Gay are right up there, but then really it's Chris Jones. The 2 sacks, and one of them is like the most underrated play of the game. Everyone's giving Chris Jones his credit, but the one at the goal line that was almost a safety doesn't give the punter room to punt. We end up getting the ball at like the 37.
39, yeah.
Because our special teams is better than theirs,
Right.
even without Butker.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a huge play. He also had the run stuff on a short yardage play. And Chris Jones had a fantastic game after the first quarter and a half having trouble on one side. They moved him over, and he just wrecked the Chargers.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Zion Johnson, the rookie at right guard, is he's very much like Trey Smith in that his physical dominance is just ridiculous, and he held up about as well as anyone in football holds up against Trey Smith on Chris Jones in the interior. But when you get him on, just a league average guard on the other side.
Now, we talked a little bit before recording this, and I'm forgetting a play because you mentioned Karlaftis making a big play, and I can't think of what it was.
It was on that series before it was the first play of that series backed up. So that they went 3 and out there. It was they did like a play action rollout for Herbert, and Karlaftis got his hand on the first ball. And then the second play, they did like the exact same kind of concept, a little play action rollout, and Willie Gay got in the passing lane, deflected the ball, and then it was the Chris Jones sack.
So Karlaftis made the back-to-back plays there. Jones was fantastic. I noticed Naughty on a couple good run stuffs, and Dunlap moves a little better than I remember too.
I am glad you brought that up because that was one of my biggest takeaways after the game Thursday night that I forgot about until now. Carlos Dunlap needs more snaps, and it needs to be over Mike Dana. And that's not an indictment of what Mike Dana is doing for this football team. I think he's played well, but Carlos Dunlap has a lot more juice, a lot more push in both the run and pass game than Dana.
It could be a case with his age. They said, we think we'll get the best of Dunlap if he plays 30 snaps instead of 50.
Or save him for the back of the year, whatever it is. That we don't know the specifics of that, but just watching the game, I'm like, man, that guy needs to be out there more.
Let's get to another big hero of the night is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I think has had his best back-to-back stretch of games since he's been on the team.
Mm-hmm. And
had a fantastic game.
Went over 100 scrimmage yards, which is something he has not done frequently. And I would argue on offense, aside from the 2 Mahomes touchdowns, had the 2 biggest plays of the game. On the Texas route where he ran over Derwin James and then picked up another 20 yards. And then the 52-yard run to get the Chiefs in field goal range and seal it.
Let's back that up and play the magic part of it, where he absolutely trucked Derwin James.
Ran him over. And this was not like they both were running up and saw each other coming. It was Derwin James was coming from the backside of the play because he saw Clyde about to catch the ball, and Clyde didn't know he was there. Caught the ball, turned, and ran him over.
I had 2 plays. So Clyde was good all night. And I had 2 plays where I had a little bit of a criticism for him. Watched him again I don't know what, but I'm gonna say what I thought live, which is number one. There was a screen pass in the fourth quarter where he had three linemen in front of him, and he tried to pass them towards the sideline. When if he'd set those blocks up, he might have scored or got another 30 yards there. I was like, you got to have better vision than that. You kind of made the case that he might have got tracked down from behind, and but man, I felt like there was a lot of yardage left behind on that play.
And you can't be too upset about that one because he did get, I think it was like 13 or 14 yards, picked up a first down, and
This is the same story here with the two plays because it's did you get what was there? Because you say, man, he got this 30 yards. Well, the play design got 30 yards because he catches the ball. There's no one anywhere around him, and there's blockers in front of him. Like you're supposed to get some yards in that scenario. And did you get them all? Is what I was asking. And the other play is at the biggest moment when we really needed it. He ran through a face mask and
career long run, 52 yards.
breaks this long run, and you're pretty excited for him. You're excited because he didn't fumble, which was his primary objective on the play, was to not fumble. But I felt a little bit like we have three running backs getting real touches, and you said that the three of them combined for over 50% of the scrimmage yards. It was a fantastic night. I feel like the other two running backs on our roster, when they broke through that line there and there's no one between them and the goal line, score a touchdown. And Clyde breaks through the line. There's no one in front of him. And his first thought was, I need to prepare for when I get chased down. And so you saw the best and the worst of Clyde, the balance, and looked good coming out of the backfield. But the speed, I mean, he knows he's not outrunning anybody.
Right. And I think that's, I guess I just don't look at it and trying to take a negative away from that because he knows his strengths and weaknesses. He knows he's not outrunning JC Jackson 70 yards and going to beat him to the pylon. That's never going to happen. But what I saw was a guy who lost this team a big game almost a year ago to the day by fumbling a ball and was not willing to do that again. And in the process of it, had a 50-yard run.
I'm glad he didn't fumble. I wish he could run faster.
And I'm not sure McKinnon is much faster than Clyde. I think Pacheco, you could argue, maybe hits his head on the goalpost on that particular run. But we know Clyde is not some burner who's outrunning everyone.
Let's make a few more defensive points before we wrap this up. Mike Dana with a good, clean hit.
Textbook.
Nothing malicious about it at all. Causes the injury to Herbert. Herbert guts through it. Will we have a party for that? Okay. I think they should have taken him out. I think Daniel might have done better. But regardless of any of that, after that, we continued to get pressure, and it wasn't with some elaborate blitzing or anything like that. We got a decent amount of pressure, really.
Yeah, and that's, again, it just kind of, for whatever reason, hasn't felt like it to me that they've been getting all this consistent pressure, but they have through both games. Because the Chiefs had 8 quarterback hits in that game against the Chargers. And I mean, Jones had 2, Karloftis had 1, Dana had 1, Frank had 1, Leo Chenal had 1. And it's just, when you apply that kind of pressure to a quarterback over the course of a game, it has to affect you. Either you're worried about the hit or you're getting sped up, trying to make decisions faster. It has to affect the player.
And I've been really, I think we've all been really hopeful that one of the keys to this Chiefs team is adding a lot of youth and athleticism to the defense. We all have high hopes for Karloftis, and you got Jalen Watson. You got all these young cornerbacks who project to maybe being good players, and you've got McDuffie. But if Leo Chenal can use that athleticism, and we saw him get in, I don't know how many snaps he played, but he did get a pressure. So I see the defense, every team you have to say before you start, barring injury, I see this defense being a lot better at the end of the year.
And I think that really is the biggest takeaway from this game is there is no argument. You see the score, 24 points. It doesn't seem like a great defensive day. You account for the fact that 7 of that was with the game basically over. And then you take into account the team and offense they were playing and how people around the league view them and think they're going to be in the Super Bowl and all this. And you say, really, they gave up 17 points across double digit possessions and and had a lot of pressure. There were highlights in the secondary. I mean, this was a good day for the team defense and a good step going forward.
Yep. So next week when we play the Colts, I might have a higher expectation for it needs to look a certain way or we need to be clearly the better team. But when you play other teams that are projected as Super Bowl contenders,
Mm-hmm.
if we're playing Buffalo, I don't care if we throw 6 picks. I
And
don't care how many penalties there are. You just need to win that game.
not only that, that any game against a high quality opponent or a divisional game is important, and you just need to get a win no matter what it looks like. That was a Thursday night game too.
And
Short week against a divisional opponent.
I wonder how much time the Chargers spent looking at Chiefs film in the offseason. I would imagine there's a bullseye on the team that wins it every year.
And that's actually an interesting point you brought up is uh, earlier before the game in the week, they were talking about how Andy started doing it in Philadelphia in the back half of his stretch there, that in the offseason, in training camp and OTAs, he would have dedicated periods of time where you're spending like 3 days here focusing on this division opponent and 3 days here on this division opponent and all this. And how he feels like that helps them break up and compartmentalize camp and also just get a lot of information on those teams. But they talked about that they were using the week in between the preseason and the regular season to study the Chargers. So
If I was the head coach of the Chargers, I would spend like April through July focused on how do we stop the Chiefs from winning another division title, because there's a very clear pecking order. That's who you got to take out, and they failed this time.
Yep.
So we're going to be back in a couple days with a preview of the Colts game, which I'm looking forward to. And the last thing I guess we should talk about is that the Broncos and the Raiders are
a dumpster fire.
I feel like they are that team from the old Waterboy movie. And like, the off season, there's a lot of hype building up, and then, oh no, we suck again.
And I think that is the case, that the Chiefs and Chargers are a mile ahead of the Raiders and Broncos in this division. I don't think it's going to be the slugfest everyone thought it was.
Yeah, the Raiders, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders win 8 games, 9 games, but they're not winning 13 games. They're not winning the division, and they're not going to the Super Bowl. And the Broncos are below them in what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
They look like the worst coach football team I've ever seen.
That's not an overstatement either.
Routine decisions that teams make every week, and they over and over are getting delay of games because they can't decide if they want to go for it or not. Like getting delay of games while still having timeouts, trying field goals they should have never tried. Like everything they're doing looks awful.
Mm-hmm. Not right. Not like a team that can compete with the Chiefs or the Chargers.
Playing 2 subpar teams and looking like Russell Wilson getting outplayed by Mills and Geno Smith. So there's always next year, which is what, as a Broncos or Raiders fan, I would be hoping I could say in week 2.
That's not right. There's always next year for a lot of years in a row.
So we're going to act like the Chiefs are the best team until they're not. And right now they are. You can't argue it. So appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.